Okay, ready to dive into something pretty different.
Always up for a challenge.
This one's called The Liat Show.
Interesting.
You pulled some stuff from her Substack, right? The Liat Show. My Journey to Infinity, a story unfolding across timelines.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Not your typical history stuff, that's for sure.
Definitely not. It's like more than a podcast, you know what I mean?
Totally. It's like
Yeah.
she's figured out a way to make history, well, alive. Not just dates and facts, more like a story that's still going on.
Exactly. So different from a boring textbook.
Mm-hmm.
For someone who's never heard of The Liat Show, how would you describe it?
Imagine learning about history, but through the people who actually lived it. Their stories, what they went through.
Okay, I can see that.
And she brings in all this other stuff, too. Music, food, art, even stuff about businesses.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it all comes together to show you what Israeli culture is all about.
Yeah.
History, but way more than that.
That's a really good way to put it. Like, she's using culture to help us understand historical events, right? Like this one episode we have. 600 years of rule made the Ottomans blind to changes. About how the Ottoman Empire fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
But she looks at it in a very specific way.
Yeah, she focuses on, like, who owned the land and how their society was set up. Things you wouldn't think would be that important.
Right. But she shows how that stuff actually led to the empire's downfall.
Exactly.
It's not just about the leaders either, is it?
No, not at all.
She brings in the everyday people, the ones history books usually forget about.
Absolutely. She talks about this system, capitulations, I think it was called, where foreigners didn't have to follow the same rules as everyone else.
Oh, wow.
Imagine how unfair that felt.
I bet.
To the people who lived there, it probably seemed like their own leaders were choosing outsiders over them.
So she's like, pay attention to the little details because they actually changed the course of history.
Exactly. It's history from the bottom up, not just from the top down.
I love that. And she connects it all to the present day, too, which is so cool. This episode about the Ottomans sparked this other piece you sent me, The Revolt of the Invisible Children.
Oh, right.
Written by Nathalie Martinek, a PhD, focuses on narcissism. Seems like a pretty big jump from Ottoman history, but there's a connection, right?
Definitely. Natalie goes into what it's like to feel ignored by society, like you don't matter.
Right.
She compares what happens in families, like when parents are narcissistic and their kids feel neglected, with these bigger patterns in society, like how the Ottoman elite ignored the common people.
Whoa, okay. So we see this theme of neglect playing out in people's personal lives and on a larger scale. And then Liat took it even further, right? Wrote, The Legacy of Neglect and How History Shapes the Arab World Today, using both her own ideas and Nathalie's.
Wow, yeah, like a conversation that goes across different times and subjects.
It makes you wonder what other unexpected connections are out there, maybe things we haven't even thought of.
Exactly. That's what makes exploring history and ideas so amazing. You never know what you'll find. You know, reading 600 Years of Rule, one thing that really hit me was how Liat talks about, like, the money side of things, how the Ottoman leaders were selling off land.
Yeah.
And not to just anyone, to foreigners.
Right. And she ties that right back to the capitulations thing. Those exemptions must have made foreign buyers, like, super appealing.
Exactly. Liat's argument is that they got so focused on quick profits, they totally missed the bigger picture. They were basically, like, sabotaging their own empire, putting their own wallets ahead of their people.
And it wasn't just about money either, right?
No, no, definitely not.
It created this whole feeling of, like, resentment.
Yeah.
People felt powerless, especially those who actually lived on the land being sold.
Absolutely. It left this, like, mark of neglect. Liat says it echoed through generations, shaped how people thought, fueled unrest. And that's where Natalie's article, The Revolt of the Invisible Children, becomes so powerful.
It's wild how she takes this historical thing, neglect, and connects it to psychology. How feeling overlooked can mess you up.
It's like the same dynamics that happened back then, they still play out today. In families, relationships, everywhere. That feeling of being invisible, like no one hears you or cares, it does something to you, to your self-worth.
And then Leah takes it even further in The Legacy of Neglect. She talks about the Palestinian refugee camps, which is a really heavy topic, obviously.
Yeah, really complex. But it's amazing how Liat handles it. With care, but also she isn't afraid to ask the hard questions. She pushes back against the idea that the camps are only there because of outside forces. She suggests that things within the Arab world have kept them going, too.
It's a bold statement, that's for sure. You can ruffle some feathers. But I think we need these tough conversations. To look at all sides, even if it makes us uncomfortable.
100% agree. Liat doesn't shy away from pushing boundaries, making us think critically. And that's what's so valuable. She's not just giving us answers, she's making us ask better questions and dig deeper into history, into how it affects us today.
And she does it all so clearly, even with tough stuff like the refugee camps. It's easy to understand, and it makes you think. She never talks down to you or judges.
Exactly. She lays it all out and lets you draw your own conclusions, which is so important, especially with things that are really personal and emotional.
It's like she's saying, here's what I think, now what do you think? Which is so refreshing.
Right. And it comes back to that chain reaction we were talking about, how one person's ideas can spark a whole new wave of exploration and thought.
Like a ripple effect spreading out.
Exactly. And in a way, that's what we're doing right now with this deep dive, starting with Liat's work, looking at where it leads, making connections, hopefully getting our listeners to do the same.
Which brings us back to why supporting creators like Liat is so important. Subscribing to her YouTube channel and all her platforms is such a simple way to do that.
Totally. The more people who see her work, the more those ripples spread. Who knows what amazing stuff might come out of that?
Okay, got to keep those ripples going. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about how Liat actually tells these stories. We touched on it, but it's worth taking a closer look.
Yeah.
What makes her work so engaging?
Well, one thing that stands out to me is how she makes history feel personal. It's not just abstract stuff, it's real people with real lives.
Yeah, I get that.
She uses stories and anecdotes, brings those historical figures to life.
Like she's saying, hey, these weren't just names in a book. They had hopes and dreams just like we do.
Exactly, and that makes their stories way more relatable. It's not just about learning about the past, it's about connecting with it on a human level.
I think that's why Liat's work has touched so many people.
Yeah.
It's personal, it's relevant, it's even inspiring.
It's not just about facts and figures. It's about the stories behind those facts, the human side of history.
And she's so good at weaving together those different threads.
Yeah.
The personal, the cultural, the historical. It's all one big, captivating narrative.
Like a tapestry, each thread adding a new layer.
And I'm always impressed by how she finds connections between things that seem totally unrelated.
Like, whoa, the Ottomans and neglect, who would have thought?
Right. It's like she's saying, hey, history isn't just a bunch of random events, it's all connected. And those connections still matter today.
Which is why learning history is so important and so fascinating. It's not just about the past, it's about understanding ourselves and the world right now.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, before we wrap this whole thing up, got to bring it back to supporting creators like Liat.
For sure. We need more voices like hers out there, especially now when there's so much information flying around.
And we already talked about her Substack, but seriously, subscribing to her YouTube channel and all that is huge.
Absolutely. Every subscriber helps her get the word out, especially with that Rising Star Award coming up.
Right. 1,000 subscribers on YouTube by the end of the month. That's the goal. It'd be amazing to see her get that recognition. She deserves it.
So if you've enjoyed this deep dive, head over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button, tell everyone you know.
It's such a small thing, but it can make a big difference. All right, as we finish up, let's give our listeners something to chew on, something to think about after they're done listening.
Okay. How about this? What event or person from history has really impacted you, like changed how you see things? And how has that changed how you see the world right now?
Ooh, that's a good one. Gets you thinking about how history is part of us, shapes what we think, what we believe, what we do, and reminds us that the past isn't really over, it's still playing out today.
It shows that history isn't just about memorizing dates and stuff. It's about understanding people, connecting with the past, and using what we learn to make the present and the future better.
And that's exactly what Liat does so well. So go check out The Liat Show, explore history with her, and you'll see all these amazing connections you never would have guessed.
And remember, supporting creators who are doing good work, that's one of the best ways to make the world a smarter, more engaged place.
Could agree more. All right, until next time, folks, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep. And she does it in such a cool way. Like, even when she's talking about really complex stuff, it's still easy to follow.
Right. Never gets preachy or anything.
Yeah, exactly. More like, here's my take. What do you think? I really appreciate that.
Me too. It all goes back to that chain reaction thing, One person's ideas can lead to a whole bunch of new thinking.
Like throwing a pebble in a pond. Those ripples just keep going.
And that's kind of what we're doing here, right? Taking what Liat's done and seeing where it takes us. Hopefully your listeners will do the same.
For sure. All right, got to switch gears for a sec.
Ah.
Before we wrap things up, I wanted to touch on Liat's YouTube channel and all that.
Oh, yeah, got to get the word out.
We already mentioned her Substack, but seriously, subscribing to her YouTube channel and her other platforms is a huge help.
Definitely. It all helps her reach more people, especially with that Rising Star Award thing coming up.
Right. Remember, she's trying to hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube by the end of the month. It would be so awesome to see her win that award.
Absolutely. So if you've been digging this deep dive, go subscribe to her channel, tell your friends, all that good stuff.
Yeah, every little bit helps. Okay, as we're winding down here, let's give our listeners something to think about, something to take with them.
Okay, let me see. How about this? What's something from history that's really stuck with you? An event, a person, whatever. Something that changed how you see the world. And how does that change how you see things today?
Ooh, I like that. It makes you realize how much history is still alive inside us, affects how we think, what we believe, everything. It reminds us that the past isn't really gone, it's still shaping things today.
It's like history isn't just memorizing dates and names. It's about understanding people, making that connection to the past, and using it to make things better now and in the future.
And that's what Liat does so well. So go check out The Liat Show, see history through her eyes, and you'll discover all these cool connections you never would have imagined. You won't regret it.
And hey, remember, one of the best things you can do is support creators who are doing good work. Makes the world a better place.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, that's all for today, folks. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.